Have you ever noticed that when you believe someone is trying to mess with your family business, you find out the culprit might have had an influence on said family? Well, that's what Lincoln and Clyde found out in the episode I'm going to talk about today. So join me as I, SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, bring you another retro review from past seasons of The Loud House. Cue the intro! Today's episode is Recipe for Disaster. In this episode, Lincoln and Clyde launch an investigation into a food company who may have stolen Mr. Lau's recipe book after discovering how the company's food tastes just like Lynn Sr.'s. The best way I can describe this episode would be that it's a different version of the Season 3 episode Crimes of Fashion. Lincoln and Clyde dress up as Ace Savvy and One-Eyed Jack and try to find the culprit responsible for a crime that ended up hurting someone. In this case, Lynn Sr. couldn't find his recipe book, and the boys assume someone stole it and possibly sold it to Frosty Farms Frozen Feasts. So the boys interrogate Grant and Kotaro to see if either one of Lynn Sr.'s co-workers may have taken the book and sold it off for a profit, but they each have an alibi. I'm in the same boat as everyone else when I say it was quite cruel of these two kids to immediately dismiss the thought of Kotaro's great-aunt dying, and that's why he was depositing a lot of inheritance money. Seriously, they really thought this guy was lying about the death of a family member. I mean, I get how the joke was they didn't know if this guy was lying just to save himself from getting busted, and then they get proven wrong when Lucy shows up and validates Kotaro's alibi. But still, Lincoln and Clyde's accusation was way too low of a blow. Next, these two believe someone working directly at Frosty Farms stole the book, and they try to sneak into the company building to find the culprit. The gag with these two putting on multiple disguises to gain entry and then literally getting kicked out was sort of a mixed bag. It was kinda funny because of how slapstick it was, but it also wasn't a real noteworthy moment either. Eventually, they do manage to sneak inside and find the person they assume stole Mr. Loud's book, but it turns out the book this old woman was using is the one she's been using for decades. That's when the boys have this woman confront Lincoln's dad, the woman assuming he was the one who stole her recipes, and that's when it's revealed this woman is actually Lynn Sr.'s old middle school home ec teacher, Miss Mildred Scalise. We get a flashback with Lynn and Mildred while Lincoln's dad explains how Miss Scalise taught him everything he knows about cooking. They each kept a book on all the recipes they made together. Coincidentally, both books looked exactly the same, and Mildred eventually started using those recipes when she started the Frosty Farms company. In the end, it turns out nobody stole anything, and Mildred agrees to let her former student borrow her recipe book. This is where we come to the ending where we find out who took Lynn Sr.'s book, and it's one of the most confusing and dumbest plot twists ever. It turns out Lenny had taken the book and was trying to return it to the library along with Lucy's poetry book and Lola's diary. This doesn't make any sense because what would make her assume her dad's recipe book and all those other books were checked out from the library? Better yet, how did she know where to find her dad's book in the first place? We're never given any sort of explanation on why Lenny would do this other than she was just trying to be helpful. I'm all for shocking plot twists, but this was the kind of twist that leaves you with more questions than answers. Overall, I consider this one of the most forgettable episodes of the series, and for good reason. It was just a different take on Crimes of Fashion, with one key difference being the stupidly confusing ending with Lenny being revealed as the indirect enabler of the conflict. This was also a very weak Clink and McCloud episode because their Ace Savvy style investigation wasn't as engaging as the one from Crimes of Fashion. It had some funny moments with them getting a little banged up along the way, but their missteps and antics weren't anything to write home about. The best part of the episode was the flashback with Miss Scalise and Lynn Sr. since it gave the latter some backstory into his passion for cooking, going from someone who made some supposedly bad mistakes in the kitchen to an expert who used those mistakes to create delicious food. And for what it was worth, it was great hearing the legendary Felice Sampler voice Miss Scalise in what turned out to be one of her final roles before her death nearly 2 years following this episode's original premiere date, both occurring in the month of July. To put it simply, this episode falls short from being merely okay on my list, and if you don't remember this one right away, I honestly wouldn't blame you. With that said, I give Recipe for Disaster a 6.9 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Recipe for Disaster. So I gotta ask, what did you guys think of this episode? Sound off in the comments below, and be sure to click that subscribe button for more Loud House related content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.